On this week's full-time roundup, the title race never sleeps as Arsenal slip going into 2024. Juventus continue to catch up to Inter Milan, and we review the great year that 2023 was, as well as predict some outcomes for 2024. Hope you'll join us for the final recap of 2023. Full-time roundup starts right now. And welcome into this edition of the Full-Time Roundup, the final edition of 2023, Daniel. What a year it has been. We started this podcast back in June, which is crazy to think already about.
Really? June?
I believe it was June. We'll get to the statistics later. But Daniel, 2023 is finally here. We are recording this Sunday, December 31st for you, right after the English Premier League games happened. How are you feeling? Any fun plans to kick off 2024?
Been, chilling a lot this week just because, I feel like the holidays have been crazy. So I need to kind of rest and recharge, reflecting. So thankful for everything that happened in 2023, including full-time roundup. It's been a lot of fun, covering the games with you, and I'm feeling great. I got a bar that I'm hitting tonight called Hoppin' in Charlotte. So looking forward to that. That'll start around 8 or 9. And gonna, do dry January actually. So I will be going
Believe that when I see it. That when I see it.
I will be going into 2024 intoxicated, but only for a few hours. And then, I will be cutting dry January short though till the 28th because I go to Gasparilla, but it'll be 28 days of sobriety for me.
Well, 27 technically because you'll start 2024 definitely still dry.
2027 and a half.
Okay,
but I guess yeah. But
so dry January just turned into a week after start of the new year because of all the drinking leading up to 2024. So got it. We got it. We understand where your head is at.
Still, that's
right.
3.5, almost 4 weeks. So that'll be pretty good.
You know what this sounds like, Daniel? This sounds like the New Year's resolutions for everyone to get in the gym, and they go for the first 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden you see the gym get very, very empty. I feel like that's what this is turning into, but that's okay. You do you.
Yeah, we'll reflect in end of January to see how good I did.
Well, with that, we will reflect on some things first. Going into 2024, we talked about a lot of stuff over the year, Daniel. There's plenty of great storylines for 2023 to reflect on as well. But first, there were games today. Of course, Premier League had a full slate yesterday on Saturday. Some great games to discuss, a couple games today. Serie A also presented us with some matches. And then, Daniel, we have a full week coming into this next week that we'll touch on as La Liga returns on Tuesday. Premier League goes on a little break with the FA Cup, so they will have a little bit of a down period, but don't worry, there's still a lot to cover for you guys. Things continually come about, and the game never sleeps. So, Daniel, with that being said, I want to jump right into it because we do have a lot to cover today. In the Premier League, though, on a Sunday, the two North London derby squads played not against each other. The first, though, I want to get your thoughts on is Arsenal, who have their second straight defeat. Is this the end of the title race for Mikel Arteta and his men?
I'm struggling to come to that conclusion as we speak right now, but it's starting to feel like that. They dropped to fourth now, and City and Liverpool both have a game in hand. They're at 40 points. If Liverpool win tomorrow, then it'll be 5 points away. I feel like they could still, slide into third above Aston Villa, but I'm thinking for the title charge of the hope of getting first, I don't think it's going to happen.
I agree with you, although I don't want to overreact. Of course, I feel like Liverpool may drop some points as well. We touched on, Mo Salah leaving for African Cup, so that could be an impact. But yeah, when you're talking about how City are going to kind of have that run that they always do, they're going to be welcoming back a free transfer, if you will, Kevin De Bruyne, who was on the bench. So that looks like 2024 is going to be his return. So add him to the mix that they haven't had basically all season. Erling Haaland's coming back. It's going to be tough for Arsenal to keep pace. And let's not overreact. It's still early, but 2 losses in a row. I mentioned that this was a must-win bounce-back performance for Arsenal on the previous episode, and I thought they were going to win handily, 3 or 4-0, and they flip the script and get a loss. So completely other end of the spectrum there. But there was also a game that, was kind of went to plan. Ange Ball is in full effect. Spurs back on track, get a big win against Bournemouth, who could have surprised Spurs. I think they've been in really good form of late. We talked about Areola Ball, but Ange needed this going into the break, and it looks like a couple more injuries that they happened, but maybe some new players coming back in January that are ahead of schedule.
Yeah, I feel like Spurs are really are in a good spot with their manager when they lose, and then they usually bounce back in a big way. And we were kind of expecting maybe a bounce back performance, but it wasn't an easy game by any means. Bournemouth started off red hot, and they were able to. It just came down to honestly, finishing for me in this game. Bournemouth had just as many chances, just did not put the ball in the back of the net, and Tottenham did. And Richarlison gets another goal today. He's been in fine form, and it's good to see. It's good to see, and we want parity, in the Premier League, and we got it today with Fulham upsetting Arsenal, and then Spurs continuing to challenge for that top 5 finish. So, all in all, for at least the Sunday games, it was a great slate.
Yeah, you mentioned the parity, and it's making for some fun conversations, especially at the top, if we can get a good title race all the way through. You mentioned, that battle for 4th with Spurs, who got a big win today. Another team that got a big win on Saturday to keep in that top 4 position that we've talked about is Aston Villa, who kind of rode the ship a little bit here, or righted the ship, excuse me. But it didn't feel like a convincing win. Burnley were very good. They played with 10 men most of the second half as well. And so you would have expected Unai Emery's team to really kind of put the hammer down, especially at home, and run away with this one. But they needed a late soft penalty, in my opinion, to get the 3 points at home. But again, Unai Emery's team is back on track, or at least it appears that way.
Contact's contact at the end of the day, and that's kind of what happened in the box. But once they tied it up, or once Villa went up 2-1, I thought, okay, they're going to kind of wrap this game up. But they've actually had trouble keeping leads as of late. I think they've lost or tied a couple games now this December with having a lead. So it was good that, after the red card happened, they were able to kind of, bounce back and keep pushing. And they left it late, but, Douglas Luiz, who's been one of the best players for them so far, converted that crucial penalty off the crossbar, kind of hold your breath kind of moment. But yeah, I'm sure Unai Emery is glad that they're ending 2023 with a win, and they sit 3rd or 2nd as of right now.
Yeah, currently 2nd place. So even though they had a little bit of a blip the last couple of games, they're in great shape going into 2024. Of course, the last of the top 4 that we'll touch on is Liverpool don't play until tomorrow. Daniel, is Manchester City, who get a ho-hum, nice, easy win over Sheffield United 2-0. And Rodri continues to show why he's one of the best, most important players in the world for that squad. We'll touch on his importance later on, as well as we tried to attempt at giving you our XI of the year. Very difficult task, but we did our best. But City win easily as well. Like I said, Liverpool will have a chance to extend their lead tomorrow afternoon against Newcastle, the first game to kick us off in 2024. But there were other games on Saturday. You mentioned, full slate as well. Any of the other games stood out to you in particular? Of course, Crystal Palace get a big win. Roy Hodgson, who was on the hot seat potentially there. Forest, first time in 30 years, I believe, beat Manchester United at home. Maybe forever, actually, if I remember correctly, at home. First time ever at home.
That's correct.
So excuse me on the 30 years. It feels like a trend number for Manchester United this year. Or do we go to Wolves, who hammered Everton? There's a lot to pick from in a great slate of games yesterday.
I'd love to talk about the Forest win, I think, first. Nuno, we literally just talked about Nuno on the last pod, and this is kind of a big job for him to prove himself. And boy, did they did. Anthony Elanga, again, with a cutback for an assist. Morgan Gibbs-White The both goals we both texted about it were completely identical, and it was just bad United defending. They just were stretched apart. No one stepped on top of the box, and it was just a pretty easy finish of just guiding the ball into the back of the net. But I do have a question for you, Matt Turner, with the mistake to make it a little shaky for Forest. How do you view Turner's spot going into 2024?
Man, Matt Turner needs a reset more than anybody. The clock needs to go into 2024 for him. He had a good start to the year, not only at going to Arsenal, but also for the men's national team in the summer. Boy, he made some pretty bad gaffes. So the last couple of games, of course, he's lost his starting spot at Forest and regained it. You got to worry about, his place in the squad, especially with the new manager. Is that something that the manager looks at and says, "Hey, I need a new goalkeeper in the back to kind of solidify what we're doing." He's not great with his feet. You can see that. We've seen that a long time, not just recently. And then, made a few errors. Now, he did make a big save that led to the transition of the goal. To be fair, that's a save he should make. It's at, a good height. He sees it all the way. It's a tough shot, but it's outside the box from Eriksson. So again, a pretty straightforward save for a keeper. I don't know. I would be a little concerned. I hope that he can turn it around. We've seen things like this in the past with, American goalkeepers, with Zach Steffen, who struggled, obviously Matt Turner more recently that we're talking about here. So you kind of worry about the position for the U.S. men's national team going into a big summer, but you just hope he can kind of turn it around the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I don't think his problem is the shot stopping. I think he's actually on par with most of the Premier League keepers at that rate. It's just, like you said, with his feet, he struggles. And we've seen that a couple times, especially this season, when he was the backup for Arsenal. That's a big part of their game. So when he came on, he looked pretty good in that respect. It might just be a confidence thing, and, he'll work on it. Once he gets the confidence, he'll stop making those errors. But you never know. You do have Gaga Solana coming up at the time. Right now, I don't think he's ready yet for the U.S. national team. And, the Barcelona, I think it's Colkin. He's making the bench, third string keeper there for Barcelona. He'll be good with his feet. So he might, fit the mold better for the United States playing out of the back. But, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Matt Turner loses his place again at Forest. But, a win's a win. So maybe, reflects on it and moves on. But I did want to move on quickly to Wolves versus Everton. Kind of surprising result. I didn't really know who to give the edge here, but it seems like Wolves with Gary O'Neill at the helm is starting to click here and get hot. And he's showing why he shouldn't have left for Bournemouth and why Wolves were smart to hire him in the summer.
Both teams, you mentioned Gary O'Neill and Areola at Bournemouth, two good managers. Of course, a weird situation, which we touched on a little bit in the last episode. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Of course, Wolves look much different this year, not so much defensive, although they are going to be naturally more, inclined to play pragmatic ball, but they have some talent up front. Of course, Wang got a goal. Yeah. Wang got a goal yesterday. Looked really good as well. Acuna on the back post puts one in there. Everton, you start to worry though. We talked about it. They felt like they had that momentum after the deduction, but don't look now. They're only 1 point clear of the bottom from Luton after all that. 2 losses in a row now, consistent, poor performances there as well, not only against Wolves, but against Spurs as well. So you kind of worry about Sean Dyche's morale message at this point, and how much can he get out of that, and how much, does that, everybody backs against the wall mentality last for Everton. So that's my big concern. My biggest takeaway from that game is kind of what Everton is going to look like in 2024. Wolves, we always kind of expect them to be kind of where they are at the table right now, but yeah, they're definitely playing a nicer style of football. And I think they're one piece away from maybe, competing for that top half of the table, but will they get there? Time will tell.
I just can't believe they have a double-digit scorer right now. I mean, for Wolves' existence in the Premier League, they had Raul Jimenez, who was pretty good at one point, but then when he had his head injury, which was like 3.5 years ago, it feels like now, I mean, the goals completely dried up. And yet, like you said, Wong with is it Wang? I'm not quite sure, but he's a great player. He's got 10 goals Cunha starting to kind of churn out some goals and I think he has double digit for goal contributions, goals and assists. So that's big. And I think Deitch will turn it around, but them being 1 point outside the relegation zone is scary. And you got to think without these points, they'd probably be in like 8th right now. So it's still a great season for Everton. I think they'll be able to kind of right the ship here. Brentford, that's the team that I'm worried about right now. I think Everton could pretty easily leapfrog them. But I don't know. We talked last episode about Thomas Frank, and he's able to kind of usually handle adversity here. So we'll see what he can do.
Yeah, and you mentioned, that game, of course, Brentford continued to look bad. Crystal Palace, I alluded to it briefly, get a big result here. The big story for me in this one, Daniel, was, Elise and Eze. And when those two players play for Crystal Palace, they're an entirely different team, right? There's even discussion of both of them leaving, or there was discussion of Elise coming to Chelsea in the summertime. If they both leave, that's going to be a big hole to fill. More importantly, though, because they're on the roster now, it's are they and when they're healthy. These two players cannot stay on the pitch long enough, but when they do, again, they absolutely dominate. And you saw it again today, both participating on the scorer sheet. And like I said, a big 3 points for Roy Hodgson, who really needed a W here. Another team that needed a W, and they make it 2 in a row going into 2024 with some big momentum. No bias here as I say that. It's just the facts. Our Chelsea, Mauricio Pochettino needed a win yesterday, and he got it against Luton. Didn't make it easy. Was not an easy one to close out, but a big 3 points to close out 2023 for Chelsea. And you feel like there's maybe a little bit of momentum. Of course, they have a couple cup games and then Fulham in the Premier League. So arguably, Daniel, I said this earlier in the season. You laughed at me. You laughed at me last week. You're not laughing anymore, I hope. There's potential that Chelsea could finish 6th. I'm just going to leave it there. There's potential for 6th.
Not going to happen.
We'll see. We'll see. Wishful thinking for 2024. How about that?
Yeah, you are an optimist now. You weren't much of an optimist yesterday once, Luton almost
No, there was a lot to be desired there in
the
the back. Let's just put it that way. Malo Gusto, I hope you're not listening to this episode, but please just stay at right back. Do not go into central midfield.
But that was enjoyable for me to kind of watch that text chain. It seemed like it was just Mets, thoughts just banging out minute by minute commentary at the last 20 minutes of that game, which was enjoyable for me. But to kind of switch back to the other league that's going on right now, Serie A. Most of 2023, Matt, we've talked about how Inter is going to run away with this thing. And guess what happened? Martinez, who's played almost every single game for Inter in the calendar year, which is crazy, by the way, gets injured, I think, a week and a half ago. They tie to Genoa today. They get knocked out of the Coppa Italia. And Juventus get a much-needed 3 points against Roma to get real close to them in the Serie A race. How are we feeling about, how Serie A is kind of breaking down right now?
Well, we touched on it a little bit. It's obviously a 2-horse race. This still makes it very interesting, although AC Milan, you got to give a little bit of outside hope to them. It's still a long season, right? There's a lot to go here. We're at the halfway mark, but it does feel like it's Juventus and Inter battle, and Juventus get a big win against a tough Roma Jose Mourinho side and close the gap to 2 points now against Inter, who do drop, but they didn't lose. And I think that's something that you look at. We talk about it in other leagues, how, you can lose points, but you can't lose games. You can't lose all the points there because you're not going to win every single week. And that's just how can you minimize that damage when you don't win? Inter did that. I still think this is Inter's season. This is a much more talented squad than Juventus with Allegri has. Just nature of the beast. That may be the end of it, of course, as you reposted for us the other day on X, which you can follow us there at Full-Time Roundup. Inter financially are in dire straits and probably will lose a lot of this talent going forward just to offset some of that financial stability that they don't currently have. So I think this is their year to win it because they have to, and not only from a financial standpoint, but could be the last one for a few years as they look to rebuild their squad.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And it's going to be an interesting, interesting storyline to keep an eye on, because and Juventus is 2 points behind. There is a pretty big gap, like you said, with AC Milan, but I don't know. I think we could see a lot of coaches moving in 2024 in this league. So, the likes of Pioli, Allegri will probably be out after this year. Napoli's coach Matazzari is already on the hot seat, 1 month into this job. So we'll keep an eye on it, but there's also some promising coaches that we like to, keep an eye on. And just real quick, surprised by Bologna getting humbled by Udinese. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, I wonder though, we've talked about Bologna a little bit. They're the surprise team this year in that top 4 race. So is it a surprise? Of course, just looking at the standing, yes, but Bologna, not historically a team that's a perennial power in Serie A. So, one of those, to your point, it's a surprise that jumps off the page, but then when you look at it, is it really that big a surprise? And it still will be a fun battle. Of course, Napoli can't buy a win either. And so they keep that title, that top 4 spot open as well, especially with Lazio, Fiorentina, and Atalanta all getting W's as well. So that's going to be, it just closes that gap for 4th, right? Makes that race between probably third and 4th that much more interesting.
Extremely. And so, as we kind of covered Premier League and Serie A on the other side of the break, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do a year-end review, just basically the main stories, main transfers of 2023, and then have some predictions and thoughts going into 2024 for you. So like always, please like, subscribe, download, rate the podcast. Follow us on our Twitter at Fulltime Roundup and let us know your thoughts of anything we've said on our 2 episodes a week here, and follow Matt at Life of Gesslin and follow me at Liverpool CLTFC. We'll be right back after this break.
Welcome back to the final 2 segments of 2023. Daniel, can you believe that 2023 is coming to an end tonight, which is crazy.
Jordan year to Kobe year.
Unbelievable. 2024 hopefully will be a great year. It's the end of the year after all. So we do want to give you our biggest stories of 2023 and take a look ahead at some of the potential ones in 2024. Additionally, we're going to try and give you, this was very difficult, our players of the year, our XI of the year, top 11. Daniel, again, normally we would go through the leagues a little bit more, but this being the last episode of the year, we wanted to kind of give you guys a full picture of what soccer looked like in 2023. Of course, this is a crazy time of year as well with breaks and fixtures and festive games and games midweek. And Premier League had, I think, 6 games in basically 2 weeks, which is wild. So we'll get back to our normal schedule going forward as 2024 kicks off. But again, I wanted to do something a little bit fun, a little different for you guys this year. So Daniel, I'm going to lead you off and have you present us our first main story of 2023. This is something that I know is near and dear to you. I also love this player and what this accomplishment meant for him. But I'm going to kind of let you take this one since a little bit of debate between you and I as far as how this one fits into this category.
Yeah, I had to go with the Iron Fist on including this just because I think it's so important to the resume here. So Messi, wins the Ballon d'Or. He won the World Cup as well in 2022, late 2022. For some reason, I kept thinking it was in early 2023, but we confirmed that. But I think this Ballon d'Or / World Cup, basically finalizes his greatness as the best player to ever play this game. He had everything but the World Cup trophy to show for it, and he did it. And I think he's on, is that 7 or 8 Ballon d'Ors for him?
8 now. That'll be
8 now.
Yep.
So that's 1 above Ronaldo, I believe, which is just great for the Ronaldo versus Messi people out there. And what did he do after he won this World Cup and won the Ballon d'Or? He goes to MLS, a kind of sleeping giant, you could argue, but the global impact was insane. As he joined Inter Miami and said, "Let me bring all my friends down here." So the likes of Busquets, Jordi Alba, followed him down there, and now we've seen Luis Suarez as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he completely transforms the North American side of soccer here. And that'll be really to see on display in 2024 as he gets a full season under his belt. So wanted to mention that. And as we see a lot of, players moving to MLS, we saw a lot of people move to another sleeping giant, you could say, in the league. And do you want to kind of recap that one for us, Matt?
Yeah, I don't know if I would classify it as sleeping giant quite yet. There's been a lot of discussion. Financial, okay, sure, we can agree on that. I'm pretty sure the money that we're talking about in the Saudi league, if we couldn't if we didn't get you there already, was pretty remarkable. As far as a sleeping giant, I don't know if I agree with that. We've seen this before with the Chinese Super League in the past. You mentioned MLS a minute ago. I think that genuinely has a little bit more structure, has some more fanfare with it, and some real bones and roots to it. Whereas Saudi League is very young. It still has potential. You cannot doubt that. Again, the money that they threw at it, the players that they tried to bring in from domestic European leagues was phenomenal. Do want to go back quickly to just to touch on Messi. You mentioned just his importance to the game globally and what he provided. It can't go without being said enough. Of course, one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time to play the game. Gets to have that World Cup, a weird one again in December. So technically it's within the calendar year that we're recording this. But just adds to a legacy that is already insurmountable, and just adds that piece that a lot of people thought he needed for whatever reason. And so congrats to him. And again, just his impact on the game as a whole was one of the reasons why we had to include him in 2023. Back to Saudi though. You're looking at players that left from, the top league, Real Madrid, Chelsea, Liverpool, PSG. The names can go, Benzema, Fabinho, Neymar, Conte, Koulibaly, Otavio, just to name a few off our heads that we are probably missing a whole host of more. Neves, Ruben Neves from Wolves, another player. Just kind of all of that movement, all of the money that was thrown around, and the willingness to say, hey, you know what? We're going to Ronaldo. Jeez, how do we forget about Ronaldo?
Can't believe I just did not include him.
And so, although you're a little older, Jordan Henderson, again, the names just keep coming to you as you talk about it. And so there is that cachet to it and that flair. But from my perspective, that's what it was, a little bit of a flash. And can this be continued going forward? I think that's also one of our storylines that we'll see in 2024 is where does this grow, right? Can the Saudis continue to build a league that players want to go to, develop, and be part of long-term, right? There's still history at Real Madrid. There's still history of playing at Liverpool or Manchester United. There is none of that really at Al Hilal or one of the other clubs that are part of the Saudi league. So how is that going to develop is going to be an interesting storyline. But just as far as 2023 is concerned, it took over. And you've seen this not only in soccer from the Saudis, but other sports as well. And I know that's a very big contentious topic in a lot of circles. So can't add 2023 without what Saudi Arabia did for the sport. Of course, 2034 World Cup as well being announced for Saudi Arabia. So a lot of things that you kind of have to keep an eye out for in the Arab world of what they're doing from soccer's perspective.
And you mentioned a lot of players and stuff like that, but they also brought a ton of coaches over. Nuno was the coach for a brief time. Steven Gerrard, the Salzburg coach, who was one of the promising managers in 2022, 2023, ended up popping over there. Just blanked on his name. So you've seen. And you've seen a recruitment of players. You've said players that are old, players that are young, players that are in their prime. All three have, made the jump to Saudi and are on those massive contracts. So it's going to be really interesting to see, like you said, if the season or this Saudi league flames out, or if players are going to seek moves elsewhere, or be content, and who stays and who goes based off, age and stuff like that. It would be really interesting to keep your eye out on. Another, big
talk about moving.
Very true. That's a great segue. Harry Kane, we wanted to highlight this transfer, goes to Bavaria and joins Bayern, has been absolutely on fire since he joined. Leaving, his home at Spurs was a big deal. He was, chasing that goal record in England as well. So, but I think it was just time for him to get some trophies, and we'll see if he actually does that at Bayern this year. But one of the Premier League's greatest players, made a big move and hit the ground running in Germany.
Not often you see a player be a headline for the entire year, right? We obviously can touch on him as a transfer story of the year as well, but just the name, like you mentioned, and everything around Harry Kane over the last handful of years with Spurs and England national team, and what he means to both of those squads and the city, the fans of Spurs. For him to go to Germany and make that move and say, hey, you know what? I need to go and do this and have a new challenge and win some trophies. And of course, if you're Bayern Munich and German Bundesliga, you are very happy that a player of this caliber came from England to your league, right? It's usually the opposite a little bit, or they stay internally but only go to Bayern, and you're getting an opportunity to say from the rest of the world, hey, look what we can do. We can bring in a Harry Kane. So again, not often you see a player be a main story, but this was one of those instances, and it just gives credibility to how important, how good of a player Harry Kane is. He's been under the radar a little bit over the years because of other players, like an Mbappe or Ronaldo in their prime, or Kevin De Bruyne in some places. And I think, it just shows that Harry Kane is of that echelon. I don't think anyone in more prominent soccer circles doubts that, but this really put an emphasis on it. And I think he deserved everything he got. Now, on the flip side of that, Daniel, is of course teams that are making moves, playing a little bit of money ball this year. We've seen some squads that lesser known, that you never would have thought of. We alluded to one of them before in Bologna in Italy, but there's also teams like Brighton, who we've touched on last episode, do not miss on their transfers, and Girona. That goes not only from a transfers perspective, I think, but you're also looking at just the way that these teams operate from management down, and it's a really refreshing perspective.
It is, especially as we just got done talking about teams and leagues that have spent a ton of money. These teams have been financially frugal, picked out who they wanted and have a replacement waiting for when they sell them for triple the value. So, Brighton was a really nice surprise last year, and they've been pretty good this year. Girona really took the cake for 2023-2024 season, as they're still in second place, I believe, in La Liga, and I don't think a single person in the entire world saw that coming. And then Bologna with Thiago Motta at the helm has been rather good as well. So glad we got to hit on that. And I love how we said we didn't want to talk too much about players and making headlines in 2023, but four of probably the five most talked about players we've mentioned: Kane, Messi, Ronaldo, all going to separate leagues and stuff like that. And I think Mbappe could be next in 2024 as a little sneak peek.
It's still why we watch the game, right? Is for the players. So at the end of the day, it does make sense that a lot of the players still dominate the headline. But it's a fun storyline, and you would hope that teams like Chelsea and Manchester United and other big clubs can follow suit with what some of these younger, lesser, quote unquote, air quotes, lesser known teams are doing, and kind of build that model, because it has been working, and an area that we should definitely be thinking about for 2024.
And the last storyline we'll get to in 2023, not as fun one, is we've seen a lot of players this year get in trouble for doing gambling. We saw Ivan Toney suspended for almost a full season. We've seen Sandro Tonali made a big move to Newcastle, and he's suspended and is missing Euros and this season as well. And then another player like Fagioli, young Juventus player, was suspended. We've seen a lot of other allegations, with the likes of Bruno Guimaraes, Paqueta, to name a few. And so it's going to be an interesting topic to keep your eye on, to see if there's another big player out there who kind of broke the rules and gets suspended, and how they kind of deal with that. Tony got the worst sentence out of all of them, so it's going to be interesting to see how they do these, I don't know, judgments and how many games and what that impact of the teams and the players will look like as they come back from suspension.
Yeah, really interesting. Not a great story, like you said, to be touched on, but it is quite remarkable that this is going on, right? Because I think this is something that has always been part of the game, but also maybe not so much, as paid attention to as it has been of late. So that'll be an interesting one as well. But there are just to continue the money theme that we've had the last couple of topics here. There was two other stories that did pertain to big moves in the game, really at the greed and the money grab of the sport, right? Super League reared its head again. Of course, there was a global backlash to this decision or this concept when the original 12 teams proposed it, and it quietly went away, although two teams in particular, Barcelona, Real Madrid, continued behind the scenes to try and make it work. They went all the way to the European Judicial Committee, which ruled that UEFA does somewhat have a monopoly on the sport in the nicest, without saying it directly. That being said, Super League will still not get off the ground because a lot of the teams that were discussed as part of it still said no, even after the ruling in Europe. So credit to the owners. I think they got the message that the sport is for us as fans and supporters, and ultimately we will make those decisions long term for our clubs and for the sport that we love. So great to see that. With that being said, FIFA has their own set of rules and they can change things as they want, and they have. So, of course, the World Cup, which we alluded to, which finished in December of 2020, again, a weird one with a winter World Cup, goes into an expansion for 2026, which, of course, will be hosted here in the United States. There will be 48 teams as part of this World Cup, Daniel. Any thoughts as far as we've touched on it a little bit? But where was your head when this came about, and what are your thoughts going into this next World Cup? Again, 2026. We'll have plenty of time to talk about it in more detail. But
I was elated about us hosting. I just really hope that even though it's changing, change sometimes can be good. So we'll see if change will be good and it will still be a watchable product. I just don't like the idea of including more teams who could be arguably worse, as well as more games for players. So that's kind of where I stand on it. But content's content. We're going to enjoy it all the same, and hopefully the luster of sounding of the World Cup every 4 years doesn't kind of go away as they keep changing these historic competitions.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And how many teams do we want to get involved in this? At some point, is it just a year continuously? I don't know how we make that work, but we'll see what happens. 48 teams will be an interesting one. And of course, it makes it easier for some squads that don't have the ability to get in, and does that dilute the game. But that's neither here nor there. A flip side of that, though, Daniel, something that is very exciting to witness, as far as we're talking about expansion and largely overdue, is just the women's game globally. And we've seen that not only here in the United States with the NWSL, had its best growth and best year to date. We've also seen that with the English Women's Premier League. The other leagues domestically in Europe are continually adding teams and growing. So again, a huge testament to the game and what it is doing. It's largely overdue, like I said, and credit to the women out there that are playing the game and growing the game the way it should be. They of course had their Women's World Cup last year. Congratulations to Spain, who took home the title in a thrilling matchup against England in the final. The only, of course, downside to this was a really, really unfortunate story that we just have to touch on briefly, because it's not all rosy in the women's game. There are still things that happen, across the world to women in general that need to be touched on and be taken care of. And it's not acceptable that in 2023 we had the incident that we had surrounding the Spanish FA and the president there and all that stuff. So, progress, of course. There's still things to work on, which we all have a part to participate in, and we definitely will going forward. So, again, expansion is a good thing, but doing it the right way is also just as important. moving into a different category, away from, more of the off the field stuff. This is directly on the field, Daniel. We saw the I want to say the integration of VAR, but let's just get the rabbit out of the hat. VAR. VAR, of course, for those of you that don't know, is video official referee, a video assistant referee. So basically helping the officials on the field make the right calls. Has this happened in your perspective, or are we at a point where get rid of this whole system and throw it out the window with the bathwater?
So I think we started in 2022. We just have seen it progress in 2023, and we've seen some good progressions and some bad progressions. One thing that we saw was with all these VAR reviews, the adage of stoppage time has been significantly higher this season, which is good because it stops time wasting and injuries. And I think it'll continue to evolve. Obviously, the handball rule is probably the biggest.
What is a handball? What is?
I don't know. I can't tell you honestly, because I just don't understand what it is anymore. I think that if they clarify, very specifically, it's too open to interpretation in the rule book right now. So I think they could do better on that. I think a fully scale change of the offside, stop drawing these fucking lines, just do the automated technology where you can just immediately see the body part. I think that would be, especially in the Premier League, would be a good, change. I don't know why they've done that. And I think the third for me would be out, the ball being out on the touchline. I think if you can have goal line technology, why can't you have touchline technology? Because we've seen a couple goals now, especially against Arsenal, where it's been debated if the ball went out of play or not. I think that would be a pretty easy switch. But how about you? Is there any, other than obviously efficiency when discussing these possible penalties and such, is there any improvements that could be made?
Yeah, you mentioned most of them, right? And I think that's how we have gotten to that point where they're that simple to fix and they can't fix it. It's just beyond me. They have the goal line technology for the ball going in the net. Why can't you just extend that to the lines of the field, right? Simple, done. There's one. Offside, everyone else is using automated technology. The Premier League has to be different. It is vocally said, we want there to be some room for interpretation. Okay, well, this is what you get. And so that's dumb on your part. It's kind of insane. But, the other part is, and we're seeing this rule change in 2024. So I would love to hear, maybe as we talk about some storylines going forward, is, if you are any part of your body is onside, you are onside. That will be an interesting.
Is that the Wenger rule?
The Wenger rule. So we will see how that impacts the game. You see that in other sports and in hockey, particularly, or where if you are on the field or on the line, it's good. And so that'll be an interesting one. And then also the big discussion about concussions and VAR and how that's interpreted and making sure that we're the substitutions and all that stuff. So, that'll be an interesting one going forward. I think there was some good progress in 2023, a good starting point. But I think there's a lot of work to do because we want to make the game fun and enjoyable, but not waste time and have players run over to the refs. And again, point of emphasis that they have not really done much of, hand out yellow cards for diving or doing those types of things where everyone runs over to the ref and says, go check VAR. Okay, they'll do it. But there was a point of, hey, we're giving yellow cards for that. And you started to see that go down a little bit, time wasting, et cetera, things like that. So again, good progress, but if you're going to make rules and apply rules, apply them. Otherwise, don't add them. That's something that frustrates the hell out of me with rules officials and refereeing as a whole. And I try and give refs the benefit of that because they're out there running around trying to make the calls the best they're doing, given what they can see, and it's a fast moving sport, and they can't see everything. So, got to give refs the benefit of the doubt every now and then. But there's some easy ones that we could be updating in 2024 to make their lives a lot easier and make the game more enjoyable. But Daniel, more enjoyable is always what we want. And in 2023, there were two teams in particular on the men's side. Of course, we can touch on Bayern Munich. They won the league for 11th season in a row, a classic down to the wire finish with Dortmund on the last day. La Liga, Barcelona took care of business pretty early in that league, so they ran away with it a little bit at the end there, getting a big championship for Xavi and squad that haven't won it in a few years. But the big story has to be Napoli and Man City. Napoli winning the title for the first time in 30 years, Daniel, since Maradona was part of the squad. The city went absolutely bonkers, as it should have. They're still kind of celebrating right now into the new campaign, but that's neither here nor there. And then the other big story, just because it's so rare that it happens, is Manchester City winning the treble. And of course, 5 trophies, 5 folks in 2023. Spurs are just asking for one. Can they get a little piece of that? Sorry, I have to get that dig in as a Chelsea fan, of course, anytime that's possible. But those are the two big stories on the field for me, Daniel, was Napoli winning the first title in 30 years and Man City, just one of the teams of maybe one of the greatest teams of all time winning the treble the way they did.
You couldn't have summed it up better. I mean, even if a team has unlimited resources and, has the best scouting department and all these things, you still got to go out on the field and win it all and still be hungry after every single trophy. And that's what Manchester City did. So got to give them props for that. 3 Premier League titles in a row as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do in 2024 and if they continue this role. When it comes to Napoli, one of the most beautiful stories out there. Spalletti, leaves his post and now gets a big job with the Italian national team. We saw the emergences of Victor Osimhen and Kvaratskhelia and players of that Min-Jae Kim of that caliber on that Napoli team, and glad that Naples could do it. The city of Naples needed that, and especially as Maradona passed in 2023. What a beautiful ending of 2023 was them winning it. So couldn't be happier for them. It mixes up and shows that parity in Serie A right now, which is what we enjoy. But now, as we kind of recap the storylines, I want to talk about the best transfers of 2023. So we're going to kind of touch on a few. Obviously, we already mentioned Harry Kane for a while now, so we're going to go ahead and move on, but just wanted to shout him out. Probably the second biggest, if not the biggest, is Jude Bellingham. Almost wins it with Dortmund, goes to Madrid this summer and has completely set the world on fire with his performances. Any nice words for Jude here?
No, I haven't spoken well about him at any point of this podcast episode. That is totally sarcasm. If you haven't listened to our pod, I pretty much praise this kid week in, week out. He's part of my young player of the week, everything player of the week, each week in, week out. Cannot speak higher about this kid and what he's been doing in Madrid already. It's not a long period of time to look at it from a transfer, only in August of this year. And yet he is probably the second, maybe the top storyline of 2023 as far as transfers are concerned. So an easy one for me there. Another big one though, Daniel, that could be, pretty close. Again, Jude Bellingham, no one is going to be, maybe Harry Kane's the only one on this list that mounts to a similar stratosphere, but James Maddison, moving from Leicester City down the championship to Spurs over the summer. Of course, he's been out of late with an injury. It does look like he may be coming back in early January for some of those fixtures, although Ange Postecoglou today did not confirm or deny when he was coming back, just that he's starting to move and kind of get in that progression. But for me, that's another big one. And then, of course, I think the big London move of the summer was the other North London side, getting Declan Rice from West Ham in a £105 million deal. What a player he's been, though, this year.
Yeah, and a lot of people were saying he was the key to Arsenal kind of going on and challenging for the title. Now that we look right now, it's not looking that way, but he's been instrumental still in their
Still
progress.
been very, very strong for that squad, definitely.
Absolutely. And just a quick one, probably the free agent of the year was on a free is Thuram for Inter Milan, went on a free this summer and has completely, fit in perfectly with Lautaro Martinez up top and enter, and as they top the league going into 2024. And then we're going to talk a couple teams to get specific with the rebuild. PSG with a big rebuild. Neymar, Messi, see you later. Bring in Milani, Dembele, King Lee, Ugarte, just to name a few. Skriniar. So PSG, a lot of faces changed in that locker room, and in the Premier League especially. Went on some spinning sprees, especially your team, Chelsea. The good, the bad, the unknown. Just quick recap on who you've liked, who you want to see more from.
Yeah, I think, of course, the 3 windows is $1 billion. So let's just put that out there.
With a B.
With a B. Yeah, that's a B, folks. It's okay. We're still in 10th place. Don't worry about it. The big ones for me, obviously, Cole Palmer, maybe the best transfer that we've done. 47 million pounds from City, and he's arguably our best player right now. And honestly, if you look at his goal contributions, 14 goals in 24 games, that's pretty good. That's pretty strong numbers. 8 goals, 6 assists. So up there with the likes of, not in the same stratosphere again, but in terms of productivity is Jude Bellingham, and at that young level, only 21 years old. So strong signing. Nkunku, who again we haven't seen much of because of his injury, has been really lively when he comes on. Scored in both games he's played so far. Didn't score yesterday, but scored against Wolves and also in the cup game. So that's another good one for me. Again, another under 100 million pound signing. So it's funny the lesser players are the ones that are delivering the most naturally. But I think the future is bright for Chelsea. I know everyone laughs about the 8-year deals and just what those look like and the numbers that were spent. But there's some young talented players there. I think Enzo will be good. Caicedo will be good in the long term. Lavia. They have to come through, of course. But I think the more recent signings are a little bit better. On the flip side, though, Daniel, it feels like this team that continues to sign players, and we're not just harping on them just because. It's just you look at it, and yes, Chelsea are not very good, but neither are Manchester United, and they signed a lot of players. I think it was $400 million worth of players in the summer for Erik ten Hag to get players that he wanted, from Onana to Mason Mount to Casemiro, Serembat. You can name a few others. I think I'm probably forgetting. Anthony. Where do you see, and what did Manchester United actually get for what they spent?
Not much. Sancho's been exiled. Martinez, unfortunately, has been,
hurt,
struggled to stay fit there. That's not Ten Hag's fault, obviously, but he was pretty good before that. Casemiro, either a red card or injury, it seems like every other game. So not much. And we talked about it last week, so we don't have to talk about United that much. But, he's been relying a lot on the youth products, and that's really good to see. So I think he'll continue to do that in 2024, and maybe, just maybe, with this new Ratcliffe financial takeover there, I think they'll start to spend money, but spend money smartly, like he's done at Nice, and Nice has been transformed under Ratcliffe's reign. So if I'm a United fan, I'm looking forward to 2024, hoping it gets better. But we'll really see. And then another team we wanted to hit on was just the Liverpool midfield rebuild. The signings of Dominic Szoboszlai, McAllister, Indo, Gravenberch. I mean, that's 4 midfielders. That's complete change. And then you're relying on the likes of young players like Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott. That was, why Liverpool did so bad last season, and they haven't lost a game. And were
you nervous when Klopp went for an entire rebuild in one summer? I mean, you lost Henderson, Fabinho, who else left from that midfield, and you kind of just said, you know what, this is not good enough. Let's do it all at once. Oh, Milner, it's not just taken in pieces. Everybody out, everybody in.
I mean, it's just bullshit that it had to be this way, but I knew it had to be this way. I mean, if they were smart about it, they would have done, 2 players a window or something like that. Kind of like Chelsea did, just with less dollar signs, obviously. But, I thought the signing of McAllister and Dominic Szoboszlai were immediate upgrades. So I was pretty happy about that. Indo, wasn't really sure kind of what to get out of him, but he's been a nice surprise so far, and he's been a bargain for only 15 million. And then Gravenberch is a project player, but I really see him fitting in kind of like Gini Wijnaldum did just so dynamic on the ball and can just do so many things well that I was very excited about that. And you saw flashes at Bayern, but you saw really the main flashes at Ajax a year or two ago. So I was pretty happy. It could have gone really poorly. I think the most important thing was they were all healthy going into the preseason. We saw things like with Chelsea and Man United, people came in injured, and it gives them a tough start to, get integrated into the team there. But I know we saw a lot of money spent, seen a lot of big transfers in 2023 with, the Euros and Copa America and AFCON in 2024. I think we're going to have even more blockbuster signings for 2024. And do you want to go ahead and name a few that
of course.
Could be?
Yeah, and of course the window opens in a couple of weeks in January. So 2024 will start with a bang with some money. I don't know how much of the big blockbusters will happen in January, like you mentioned, but of course everyone, I think, in the world of football is keeping an eye out for the Kylian Mbappe saga and how does that end? Will he end up in Madrid? That is the biggest question, I think. And once that domino falls, if it falls, there's been rumors of him signing a new deal with PSG. I don't know how that goes over. We'll see. Once that domino falls, I think the rest will kind of come into play a little bit, who will be moving around. Of course, if he leaves PSG, they'll have ample money from that deal to make some moves themselves, which again, just trickle effect, right? The other one I think that people will be watching for is Endrick going to Real Madrid from Brazil. He's a young talent, a really, really young, talented squad or set of players coming through the system right now. You have Victor Roque as well, who's coming over for Barcelona. You'll have, I'm going to butcher this kid's name from Argentina, who's going to go to Man City, who just signed as well. Echeverry, thank you. So you have, that's just to name a few. You have another couple of youngsters as well coming to Chelsea that everyone's pretty hyped about. David Washington, will he be one of those youngsters that kind of really steps out into the fold that people are thinking he's going to be? So there's some really good ones
too.
Yep, exactly. There are some deals done, is what we're saying. I think as far as storylines that we'll see, again, once Mbappe falls into place, that'll really make things happen. And who knows? There could be names that we don't know about yet. You mentioned moves always happening after major tournaments. We saw that after the World Cup, of course, and you'll see that, like Daniel said, after Euros, AFCON, and Copa America. So keep an eye out for that. The other one that we want to touch on quickly, because we've touched on this as well on the episodes in previous, is the MLS rules, Daniel. And will these kind of be, a way for teams to organize and build team building? We touched on this with the guys over at Charlotte Soccer Show. If you haven't checked that episode out, go do so. Also go check out those guys. They do great work as well. But thoughts on the MLS new rules quickly? I know, like I said, we touched on that in that episode with those guys.
Yeah. Higher salary cap will help, build more of a full squad. Because, the first 11 usually for most MLS squads are solid, but once you kind of get into that busy fixture schedule, you'll see the depth struggles. So that'll be really helpful. I think they're going to introduce some injury rules. So if you get injured and you're on the pitch for more than, I think, a minute, then you have to sit out for 2 minutes. So they're going to, I like that the MLS is going to be the kind of the guinea pig for some of these big rule changes that will or could happen in Europe. So I'm excited we were talking about the AR. That's kind of, plays a part in there. It's going to be really interesting with how Messi plays in the MLS. If, this is going to be, a kind of like a stock that just shoots right up, especially with hosting 2026 Copa America this year and the World Cup in 2026. Will soccer fever kind of hit the U.S. and we'll see more engagement from our own domestic league than ever before. So really excited to kind of see what 2024 is in store for us.
Yeah, and you mentioned Copa America in the U.S. as well this year coming up. And so, we, along with the storylines of transfers, there's just general storylines that we're anticipating or thinking about for 2024. Daniel, for me, a couple big ones that stand out, we'll keep it close to home, as you just alluded to. what is the future of the U.S. Open Cup? Of course, something that happened after we recorded that MLS episode that I mentioned is MLS saying we are not participating in the U.S. Open Cup this year, although that is up for debate. They're still going back and forth with the U.S. Soccer Federation. But at least as far as I'm aware, as we record this, Next Pro is still the teams that will be participating from an MLS perspective, or has that changed since they had a back and forth?
I thought I saw U.S. Federation put their nuts on the table and say, we actually want, the teams to participate, and we don't think that's the right thing to do. I thought I saw something like that. It's going to be
I did see that. I just don't know if they've hashed it out.
I don't think they've hashed it out. Yeah, so that'll be definitely a storyline to keep an eye on. England does the FA Cup, and Germany does the Polkai, and these are some of the competitions that we love to cover. So it'll be really sad if MLS thinks they're too good to do that, which is just ridiculous. Another storyline, just staying in domestically, how is the U.S. national team going to do in Copa America, and play against really, really good competition? We see the same, they play the same, lesser opponents year in, year out, but is the future of Greg Berhalter going to be in doubt in 2024? Is that like a big storyline we're going to follow? So really excited for that. But I do, we have three big cup competitions, Copa America, Euros, and AFCON. Let's get our predictions here for those, and then we can kind of hit on some other ones. Copa America final, or who wins right now?
Argentina beats Mexico.
Wow. Okay.
And I think this is the last time you see Lionel Messi play internationally. Of course, there was a lot of debate about that after the World Cup, but I think you heard a lot of stuff about with Scaloni and Di Maria already announcing that they're kind of, well, Scaloni didn't, but he kind of hinted at it. Di Maria saying Copa America is it for him. I think this is the last time you'll see Messi in an Argentina kit. And I think this is one of the last seasons Lionel Messi will play soccer professionally at any level. I think MLS he's done as well. So yes, Argentina, Mexico for me. I think Argentina goes out on a high and wins this tournament. Prediction for the U.S. men's national team, if that's what you're going to ask me next, I think semifinals is a great result for this squad in this tournament, just given the strength of this tournament and what it is, sets them up in a good way to look at some things to position and get ready for 2026. But anything less than a semifinal is a little bit of a disappointment for me for the U.S. men's national team.
Could not agree more on the U.S. national team take there, and I think Greg will probably get fired if that does not get achieved. For me, I'm going to go Argentina, Uruguay final, and I think Uruguay, Bielsa ball, is going to win this tournament. I really like where they're at. I'm worried about Brazil at the moment, so they're usually the favorites.
No Neymar as well.
No Neymar.
That already. Yep.
So we'll see, but we always see these random kids, step up in these tournaments. So excited to see who's going to be the breakout for this one. Euro 2024. I might be going to this one, so that might be a cool announcement. Down the road for us as a podcast. But who do you think is going to be in the final, and who wins?
I think everyone knows my pick here. If you don't, well, I'm going to tell you right now, France will win this tournament very easily. They will
very
play easily. They will play Italy in the final. Italians know how to play cup competitions and how to advance, especially now that they are in the tournament, which was up for debate or concerned at one point. France, Italy, that's your final.
All right. I'm going to go France, England final.
No England. Portugal? What happened to Portugal?
Portugal's going to make it to the semis. I think they get knocked out by one of these two teams. I think England.
But they have Ronaldo.
No, I hate Ronaldo. You know that. But I think that England will upset France and Matt, and I'll be enjoying watching his tears as France lose another final.
That would be true.
2 years. So
that would be true.
That would be great. And hopefully I get to see a third if Liverpool and Chelsea make it to the EFL Cup. But now AFCON, we'll probably, cover the impact of AFCON on all the leagues in a later episode, but this is going to be a in-season tournament here. Who's going to be in the final and who's going to win it?
Man, final is tough. Ivory Coast, Senegal, perennial teams. Nigeria is very strong as well.
Don't forget Egypt.
Don't forget Egypt with Salah, although that's really one of their main drivers. Senegal are really good, top to bottom and deep. Same with Nigeria. So that's my final: Nigeria, Senegal, and then give me Senegal to win the whole thing. They've improved so much over the years. It's been remarkable to watch that turnaround and what they've done as a nation from a footballing perspective. So I think they get this one done.
I'm going Senegal, Egypt final. I think that Egypt gets one here, supplant Mo Salah's legacy as the best African player to ever grace this earth. But, I liked what you said with Nigeria and Ivory Coast. They have a buku of talent, and I think that's being on display more than it ever has been before. And for the Asian Cup, I think we'll both agree that obviously I think Japan's going to win this with ease, and I think Korea is obviously the second best in this tournament.
Yep. But impacts as well, inter-season competition as well, like AFCON. So we'll keep an eye out for that as well.
Apologies to our Asian listeners there. But yeah, no, I think that just to give you guys some flowers here, I think that Japan will go on and reach the semis in the World Cup. So that's my hot take of, a year.
4 years away.
So a couple years away, but it's whatever. A couple other storylines for 2024 we want you guys to look out for. Will City actually get punished for their FFP breaches? We saw Everton get a big, stick on the wrist for one breach, which was, how many points was it? Was it 13
10
or
points.
10 points? So, I mean, if you're
so do the math,
logic,
it's 115 points times 115 times 10. Yeah. So City will never, ever play soccer again if that math adds up correctly.
Yeah. Matt was never good at math, but he did a great job there. So very excited to see them get stripped of all their titles in 2024. That's my dream personally, but whatever. Two other quick ones, since we're on City. Can City win their fourth Prem in a row? Can they win another, treble or multiple trophies this year? They're
I guess that depends on the punishment, right? If they
that is true.
So part of the two-pronged answer there, but it does look that way. But who knows when this punishment comes down? Could that completely change things? So, what is the Man City punishment? Is the big storyline for me in 2024 in England?
Or will they continue to kick the can down the road? They're probably the favorites in both the Prem and the Champions League. So interesting storyline to keep an eye on. And the last one we have before XI of the year is, will Bayern Leverkusen knock Bayern off their, decade winning spree here? Man, do I hope so.
Would be an interesting one. Of course, it would be chaos in Bayern if that happens, in Munich, if that happens. So we'll keep an eye out for that. It does look, as we record, 4 points clear right now at the top. So Xabi Alonso doing some magic. We'll see what happens at the end of the season. But Daniel mentioned those are just some of our storylines for 2024. There's a lot of stuff that will be covered on this show for you guys. We'll do everything we can. We talk about it. We'd love to hear from you guys because there's just so much soccer we can't cover it all. So you can of course follow us over on X at Full-Time Roundup and just kind of interact with us, of course, throughout the 2024 calendar year. Now, Daniel mentioned our XI of the year. We do this every Sunday generally, although we haven't of late just because given how crazy the schedule has been and only one league going on at once. But Daniel, we wanted to bring it back. Starting 11 of the year. Again, we just, for everyone who's new here, we do this together. We identify who our top players are in defensive, forward, midfield positions, as well as a goalkeeper. And we have a 3-4-3 in this instance. So we've changed it up. We've gone 4-3-3 just because it's just such a hard team to put together at the end of the year. We have some honorable mentions as well. So Daniel, just because there's a couple players from some particular team here to start us off, fire away with our goalkeeper and defensive players of the year.
So with goalkeeper, with injuries and everything, it was a really tough decision here, but I do think that Alisson is still the best keeper on planet Earth for 2023. So I don't know. That might be a surprise for some, maybe not. We'll see. For our right back, we selected Trent Alexander-Arnold. You know, how many goal contributions he's getting, especially with this new inverted role he has kind of changed the game as well. So we wanted to, highlight that. Saliba for Arsenal, best defense in the league right now and last year as well. So he's been absolutely fantastic. It's going to be really interesting to see if he, gets on and Francis XI in the Euros come 2024. Ronald Araujo, another center back for Barca, won the league, best defense in La Liga, probably first, maybe second best center back on planet Earth as of right now. So had to shout out the Uruguayan. And then fourth is Bastoni for Inter Milan. Went to the Champions League final. Young Italian center back will be playing a big part in Italy's future plans. And they're, top of the league right now in Serie A with the best defense as well. So had to shout out him. Do you want to take the midfield and the attackers?
Sure. I'll take the flashy names. I get to say the ones everyone likes. Daniel, of course, put together a great list of defensive players. We put them together, but calling out a couple players I had forgotten. And so, again, this is why we do this together. But Jude Bellingham, what can you say? We've already mentioned him before as the signing of the summer. He can play anywhere in the midfield. He can play the 8, the 6, whatever you want him to play, he can play. So he's obviously in there. Rodri from Man City. Without him, I don't think that this team is the team that it is. We've seen that this year when he's out injured or suspended. They just aren't that same squad. Of course, he gets one of the most important goals in the Champions League final that gets them the title, as well as a game before that in the Premier League to kind of secure the title for them there. How can you not have him on this squad? Of course, alongside him, pretty formidable, tandem here is Kevin De Bruyne. Hasn't played in 2023 at the latter half of the year just due to injuries, but when he does play, boy, does he change this entire squad. And of course, when you win the treble, you're going to have a lot of players on the squad. That's just how it works, right? So alongside Rodri and Kevin De Bruyne, up top, we'll have to add Erling Haaland, who scored over 50 goals in 2023. Absolutely ridiculous to say that out loud. And what he's done at City and just coming in and being, honestly, the hype and living up to that hype and delivering was just phenomenal. A finalist for the Ballon d'Or. This kid will only continue to grow in lore and what he does on the pitch. Alongside him, Kylian Mbappe, of course, one of the most arguably talented players on planet Earth, potentially that next generation of player behind Messi to come in. Continues to do it for PSG and the French national team, and the future is continually bright for this kid. We'll see what happens to him if he stays at PSG or moves to Madrid in the future. If that happens, again, world's his oyster. And lastly is Harry Kane. How can you not have him on the list here as well? We talked about him at length on this episode, as well as just what he means to England national team, Spurs before he moved to Bayern Munich, and what he's doing currently at Bayern Munich. It goes without being said that he is our final striker. We mentioned some honorable mentions.
Which we had to. We had to make an exception.
It's just so many players that we felt we went back and forth with this. It was like, how can we not have this person? How can we have this person? So we got to give some honorable mentions. Daniel, I'll go first with the first couple I had. I had Ederson as an honorable mention for the goalkeeper of the year. Of course, you mentioned Alisson. He's a fantastic option, but winning the treble, playing starting for Brazil, it was tough for me to have Ederson off the list. So he's an honorable mention. Karim Benzema up front. Of course, he gone to Saudi League in the new season, but the early half of 2023 was an absolute world beater, one of the best on the planet. Can't have him not there as well. And then Heung-min Son carried Spurs when Harry Kane was not only not part of the squad here in this half of 2023, but earlier in 2023 when Kane was injured, the Spurs squad would not have been anywhere near where they were had it not been for Son. So those are my 3 honorable mentions. I know you have a couple as well, but again, this was such a hard list to put together.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, Mohamed Salah completely carried Liverpool in the latter half of last season, which was a disaster. But without him, we would have probably been mid-table. I think we got 5th. Vinicius Jr., this was his big breakout year, kind of finally replacing the likes of, Cristiano Ronaldo and players of that fashion who ended up leaving after those 2 Champions Leagues in a row. So he, lit the world on fire and is arguably Brazil's best player. John Stones, another City player, but I talked about the inverted defender into the midfield role. Him and Pep started that, and I think inspired Klopp and Trent, and that tactic tweak was key to them switching it up and winning the treble last year. And he was kind of the big player that would slot into midfield and play next to Rodri and give Kevin De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva that space to go and attack. And my last but not least is the introduction of Gavi from La Masia. Man, did his passion and leadership at such a young age spurred Barcelona on to win La Liga. And then we saw this year with his injury, they don't look like the same team without Gavi in that midfield. So wanted to give him a big shout out. We also have Coach of the Year. Obviously, this is a pretty easy decision here. Pep Guardiola.
I think easy one. Yeah. You win 5 trophies in a year. You kind of have to.
But we do have some cool honorable mentions, and we've touched on almost all of these managers within, our first 30 episodes of doing this podcast. Spalletti, with Napoli, now with Italy. Inzaghi with Inter. Xabi Alonso with Bayern Leverkusen, and Unai Emery with Aston Villa. Shout out to all those coaches, and we'll see if they kind of grow from these roles or, they stay and, make their own success.
Yeah, you mentioned honorable mentions, it goes again saying without, even for the players too, very tough list to put together. Great performances on the sideline, on the pitch in 2023. And these are just some of the players and coaches that we thought stood out the most. Daniel, it's been a crazy year, not only for the play on the field as well, but for us here together, you and I doing this show. You mentioned already 30 episodes. Doesn't feel like it. I can't believe this will be 31 going into the new year. But thank you for everyone who listened to us over those 31 episodes. 1,100 downloads, which I know doesn't sound like much for us just starting out and doing this. We couldn't have asked for a better set of fans to listen, and we appreciate you guys beyond words for all the support. We're looking forward to 2024, and it's going to be a great year, and we have a lot of things lined up for you guys. Everyone have a happy and safe new year, and we will see you in 2024.